Hello, I'm Greg Eva, and today I've got a quick knowledge sharing session on capturing and analyzing ThingWorx utilization statistics. I realized a couple weeks ago I said that that was going to be my last video on ThingWorx. My boss reminded me that I better not say something along those lines, and it's true. I guess I have a couple more up my sleeve. Let's get into this. So, if you've ever seen me give a presentation talking about some performance monitoring or measurement techniques, you will undoubtedly have heard me talk about utilization statistics, which have been around in the product for quite some time, potentially dating back to ThingWorx 8.4. Super valuable, and we can just go in, we can turn on the utilization statistics subsystem. We'll have a look at this quickly, and it'll capture these statistics for us, which we can then use for things like determining if a service is executing the correct number of times within a given period. So as we're troubleshooting or debugging or doing some testing of something along those lines, identifying over here, you can see the numbers identifying maybe that a service is being called 2 or 3 times more often than it ought to be. Can be one of those quick troubleshooting mechanisms to dive in. Also sorting by time as well can give us a quick heads up on things that might be taking a long time, indicating that there's some memory or database or other processing performance issue. Super valuable. What is lacking, however, is anything related to time and also ease of use. So a number of years ago, what does this say? 2021, I put this community post together that outlines a method to essentially do a post request, if I recall correctly, to the services that are going to provide the utilization statistics for the entity utilization statistics, and then model them and mold them into something that you can take into Excel. And the a benefit of doing that is we can apply some coloring, we can use filtering, we can do searches, and we can also just kind of take an snapshot analysis of a particular moment in time that we can then compare to later. So this is something that over a number of years used, I guess, often, quite frequently, especially how kind of easy it can be. It does lack two things, however. One is really an ease of use. Just give me something. I want the statistics. I want to be able to get them into something so that I can do some analysis like that. It's also missing another thing, which is some notion of time. Typically, when I have gotten into doing these, I'm just quite strict with people and I say, you must reset the statistics at a particular hour, and then 1 hour later, you go back and you get the export. This way, we understand what a particular time dimension looks like. When we're doing an analysis, we can see the number of service executions. It's 1,234 over a 60-minute period. We can do the math, divide those out, and we can come up with some rates, and we can get understandings of some rates and how often things are happening over time in a particular period. Over a 1 hour period, what's not so great about that is that we're not going to catch anything that might be running at night or over a longer period of time, like things like purging, like reports, or anything that might run less frequently. So in that case, you would have to do that over a couple of days, and becomes a little bit more difficult to manage. There's another problem with that as well, is that um, oftentimes we want to track and analyze variation, and variation of the number of times something is executed, or variation of the mean time. If we go back to the previous slide, variation of this mean time here for some of these services can be super interesting to map or track over time, because we can see that maybe the count of the executions is going up, but the mean execution time is not. That is giving us an indication that the latency of a particular service is not at all related, or not at the particular volumes or throughput of the service executions that we're talking about. and we can see that correlation. So let's have a quick look just at the. I was not even going to do the help page. We'll look for it like this. ThingWorx help centers. So we're going to go for 9.7 here and look for utilization, using utilization subsystem to monitor slow execution of services. Um, let's look for some other ones. Utilization subsystem. So that was one of the troubleshooting sessions, the first one that we landed upon. Here we have the actual section that is outlining the utilization subsystem, as well as the options and their purpose. We are going to go into the particular environment here that I'm using as a test and just quickly have a look at how this is configured. So here the configuration is that we have enabled time statistics. This is what is going to capture the timings that we just saw there, the min, max, mean, statistics as well as counts. There's some of these new options that have been added here over the past couple of years for various uses. I may as well state what they are for. Size statistics. This is really related to what's it called? Multi-event subscriptions, and the shared memory state of the JSON state object. And we have aggregation enabled, and that is going to ensure that we don't have one particular counter for each of the entities. We're going to have a particular entity template type, actually all template types based on the service name or the subscription name aggregated together, which is what we saw in the screenshot previously. We have the services under the category here, utilization statistics. You can see we have a whole lot of them, get, reset, and whatnot. If I just use entity, get entity statistics, this is the generic one. That is going to get us all of those statistics that we saw in the screenshot. With these regex filters over here, it's useful to note that if I have something here, I can actually use a regex here. It's not a super powerful regex engine here, but I could do something like telemetry. And I can also do different sorts. So one of the sorts is mean time. So that'll, instead of sorting by the default count, that'll sort by the highest mean time, and sort ascending is false, so it's in descending order. You can see that the highest mean time is this particular one. And so it can be very helpful for kind of quickly getting to some useful things. But if we want to watch this over time, this is kind of what I wanted to show you today. I'm just going to come into here. I created a scheduler a couple of days ago on this POC environment here, and the scheduler, all it's doing, I think I set it to 4 hours. Normally I would set this to 1 day or 24 hours, but I have just kind of quickly taken the two snippets in here, and I popped in this one to get the entity statistics report. So the entity statistics report is just going to do the same thing as that API we just called, where we get a JSON output, and this is going to create a CSV file, which is going to go into the reports folder under entity statistics. There's a folder in there called entity statistics once the report is created. And then I'm going to reset the statistics so that when we look kind of from one of these files to the next, basically the counts will be reset, but I don't really care about the counts being reset. What we do care about is the timings being reset, because if we don't reset the like maxes and the means, then we'll have them max that will just kind of continue over. So that's why I'm resetting them here after 4 hours. So basically this scheduler is going to make a number of CSV files for me that I can go and pick up later. Let's go and do that right now. I'm going to cheat a little bit to get these things. What's it called? Statistics. think I'm going to use this one. Wasn't really what I had in mind. I'm going to modify this thing actually. This is a special template that is going to collect logs. Depends on from this copy log thing template, and here relationships uses this empty. Yeah, this is the one I'm looking for here. View. So this one is just entity statistics reports. It's going to capture and collect all the entity statistics reports going back 60 days from this folder entity statistics. Is going to put them into the support repository entity statistics folder. And if I go ahead and execute this, copy logs, that's going to fill that folder up. It's going looking for them and it's done. And I'm going to zip them up as well. And then let's go and look for them here. Okay, so we've got this folder here. As I said, I have them for, it's actually two environments. It's actually two environments. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. We'll see. But I have a lot of files in here for our intervals. The nice thing about using a scheduler as well is, yeah, modified dates are wrong here, is that we're going to get perfect timings. We can really set when we want this to occur. When you're doing this by hand, you can have some fluctuation, whether it be by seconds or minutes, which is, depending on what you're trying to track, can be problematic, especially if it's other things that are kicked off by timers or schedulers. So there's all those files, and I did say to zip it. So here I have the zipped file containing those files. So here they are, those files, and I'm just going to rename this folder. I don't know, we'll call it CSV. And we're going to go and have a look at all of these. I guess now's a good opportunity to say there is something that I use to have a look at these data. I guess we should have a quick look at the head first. CSV. Okay. Just take one. Purpose is just to have a look at what's inside. And here we see the same essentially setup that was in the REST API call. We also have the headers, the column headers in here. So that's important. And we are going to reuse those because they will be used to name the columns in Excel, that file that we get in Excel. So basically what I'd like to do is I'd like to take this timestamp out of this file name, and I would like to apply that in here because the timestamp is already in the file name. So if we take it out of here, parse it around, put it into something that's Excel compatible, then we can essentially just put a timestamp in front of each of these, and then that will allow us to concatenate all of the files together, including their timestamp, potentially even adding a couple of fields, maybe doing some particular parsing on some of these values in here, and we can essentially make it ready to import with a couple of clicks into Excel. So that's exactly what I've done with a Copilot generated script. I'm just going to search for a log timeline. This is not exactly the GitHub best place to put this. It's where it is. Log timeline. There it is, Greg Eva log timeline. So this repository in here, I have this file here, time series format statistics. And as I mentioned, this is just a Copilot generated script that I put together in about 10 minutes one day. Maybe not 10 minutes. maybe a couple of hours. But in any case, it's going through, it's looking at some statistics like those column header names. It's looking for a delimiter that should be used depending on what type of system you're on. It's looking for all files that have this in the name. It's going to parse that file name out. It's going to tear out the date and timestamp in there. It is going to reparse and reformat that into a compatible timestamp. And as you can see, it's kind of stripping some other stuff out. It's also adding some other columns here, this name formula, type formula, impact formula. I'm using this thing that I call impact, which is really to get an idea of things that may be impactful that is different than just time or count. So it combines time and count using an exponential to the 1/4 and log scale. So basically, as they get further and closer to this kind of norm, we'll have a higher impact for things that running running slowly, but more times. Basically, it's trying to normalize something that might run slowly, but only be executed one time compared to running quite regularly, but also kind of slow. You can't just do a simple multiplication as the numbers are going to be way off there. So this is a new field that I'm adding, execution time format. I'm also turning it directly into seconds from the milliseconds, just because this way we're going to be able to exploit it right away as seconds, as opposed to having to do our own calculations. And then I'm also doing some other things like max time seconds, mean time minutes. So, getting some columns ready in case we want to exploit those for easier use in Excel. So if you want to use this in Windows and you don't have like Git Bash or something like WSL that can run the Bash script, then you'll have to convert this into PowerShell or something along those lines. But let's have a look at what we get out of that. So in this folder, I just have to run this time series format statistics, and you can see a whole bunch of stuff goes by, and you can see that here's some of my additional columns. I'm adding this trim mid stat name, find this. It's complex, let me just say. Basically, I'm tearing some things apart in the statistic name because one of the things in the statistic name was this a little bit long, right? This TWX stats entity aggregate subscriptions, audit purchase schedule, all of this like it's extremely long. When we get to using a pivot table or something like that, really want to clean this up. So this is what this particular line does. Okay, so let's pop that into a CSV file, my CSV file. And now let's open this up in Excel. So here from Excel, I mean, we have that CSV file. We just go get data from Power Query. We're going to say CSV file. We're going to go find that CSV file. There's my CSV. You can see it's quite large with all those crazy formulas in there, almost a megabyte. And one of the things you might have noticed that just came up right away, it's found the column selectors, and we've got all of these values into the with the column header names. Let's load them in, and you can see this didn't really work, and that's really just because we have to kind of come into the table and hit enter on one of them. Thought that was what we needed to do, hit enter on one of them. Problem with the formula, that's great. This is a great demonstration. Maybe it's one of these. Comma, I see the problem. See, the problem is this is using a comma here, and right. This is a good sort of segue for troubleshooting. I've got French regional settings on my computer, so I don't use a comma for the separator. So it's actually a semicolon. So I'm just going to select these two fields, those might have automatically opened up if I had a comma, find and replace, and I'm just going to say in these two columns, replace the commas with semicolons, replace all. Okay, that was a lot. There we go. Now the formula works, and you can see it's just shortened it a little bit, and it's created this type field as well that allows us to kind of quickly services or subscriptions. If I'm only looking for services, I can remove one of those and get rid of the other ones. But as I say, just trying to clean this up a little bit and make it so that this is going to be friendlier for the report. We're not done with the stuff that was broken. However, you can see over here, these are not working. I believe this is the one I have to do first. The execution time seconds, if I just hit enter following the line, what's going on here? There we go. Enter following the line, and then same here. It's going to determine that those are formulas and it's going to generate them. So I do the 5 columns here, select the first one, go all the way to the bottom, down to here. Control D or Mac key D generates everything for us. And now we basically have a file that is ready to use. We have this host system field, and this is kind of what I was wondering about a little bit is this is a multi-node system, and you can see this host key. It's actually not unique to a system. It seems to be unique to the execution. So it's going to kind of be useless to us, but in any case, so we'll hide this one, and we can hide this one. Let's just keep the ones that are more relevant for us. We got min time, max time, mean time. We've got this impact field. I'm actually going to also get rid of some of these decimals. We certainly don't need so many decimals. Okay, and then let's save this. CSV, book one, perfect, book one. All right, so now, I mean, we've already got some nice stuff in here. We can just kind of take this particular field. We can do some analysis already on here with the date and the time stamp over here. We can also make sure that this is ordered appropriately. You can see the pivot table mechanism has cut this up, and it's got the different days already laid out in here. So I will say that I want this to be ascending, and you can see that it's going up in increments of 4 hours. But really the nice part of sort of this trick that I'm working on showing you here is really if we take this to be multidimensional across time. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say insert a pivot table here and take this pivot table, and I just kind of have to think about really what's the good way to represent this. So we did have some time fields that we saw in the filter that were showing us how to break this apart. That's perfect. So we get the dates there. And if we wanted to add or remove them, we can kind of leave that in there. I've actually never done this analysis on a 4 hourly basis. So we'll see what the pivot table gives us, but we have that shortened statistics name. Sorry, yeah, this is the name here. So, I mean, we can put that across the top, but is that what we want to see? Guess so. We want to see the value. I want to look for things like the sum of the counts. I also want to look at execution time seconds. You know what? We'll look for not the means. We're not going to track the means. We're going to track the total. So we can track the total execution time. Actually, that's a bad idea. Let's take that one out of there. One of the bigger fields is actually going to be more adapted. Time, execution. No, we don't have anything. Hours, days. We use the execution time seconds. We are going to get those in seconds, so that's not going to be immediately parsable for us. And then we'll also throw this mean time in here. And we need to change the, so we want the sum of count. We want also the sum of the execution time. This will tell us within the 4-hour period for each of the services how long in total that they ran. And then here, this is the mean time in minutes. I think we wanted mean time in seconds. Yes, remove field, mean time in seconds. And we want to say the average. So we're going to average the average just to get the overall. And we can also set some of the numbers of decimals, 2 decimals. Sum of. Okay, we should be good. And there's actually one more thing we're going to do. I have to remember how to do this. Average of time, average of mean time. I think I have to choose the column sum of execution time. And here I want to all right, I might not be able to do that in here. Table options. You know what? I'm looking at this the wrong way. We need to change the dimension around here. Names go down here, and timestamp goes over here. That's better. Count goes over here. Okay. Might be displaying a little bit too much data, hence the column widths. We forgot the date timestamp. Oh, there it is. Okay, right, it's across the top. And I'm going to get rid of one of these values. Maybe the mean time. Remove. Okay, sum of count. Right, okay. So this is one of the days, sum of count, sum of execution time. Right, there we go. And so here we can see now if we wanted to look at the different values, we can essentially pick one of the services. I mean, we can do it from a number of ways. We could do it there, or we could put it in the top, but we can put a service and see how its execution is running just based on this. And we can look for things like the count. If I wanted to see this by ordered by count, working great. The multi-day with hours. It's been a while since I did one of these. But basically, I mean, you can see that we've got the different days over time. And the intention is that we can really just pick one of the services and look for the long execution times. That's a little bit better. Execution time. So this is the total execution time. It's easier for us to see. We don't have as much data being shown. This is seconds. as well. So, I mean, here quickly, just scrolling down the list, we see here that this processing telemetry, we saw those other services previously. These are big ones. So we've got the total and we've got kind of the daily averages. So we can kind of take this and we can put that count back in and we can see how the two values of number of executions as well as executions over time are comparing to one another. And more importantly about this is now that we've created our Excel workbook, is we've got the dates in here. So we can kind of just file this away, tuck this away somewhere and come back to it another time, leave it a couple of weeks and come back and remind ourselves, hey, when we developed this, what were the execution times looking like when we put this into production? And then we can do a little bit of a checkpoint later on to see how it's actually behaving and comparing those numbers as far as numbers of executions per day, maybe mean execution time and whatnot to what had been put in production so that you can kind of get an idea not only is what is running inside of your ThingWorx application, but how are those service executions evolving over time, because that's one of those things is we typically don't see these types of things creeping up on us, whereas something like a purge that's executing for longer and longer and longer over time will definitely get to a point where it'll time out if it's unable to kind of keep that constant pace. All right, so this was just a quick overview of how I take and I analyze these utilization statistics. Can be super powerful once you get it into Excel. I mean, it's really up to you to look at how you do your analysis using pivot tables. You can also make some graphs if you want. Frankly, the table format works quite well, especially if you're looking at things on a daily basis. All right, have a great one.